Where are you located?
I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay, so you're on the West Coast as well.
West
Okay.
Coast. Yes. All right. So we are live, man.
All
So
right, it's
welcome
good to be
everybody.
live.
I'm here with the one, the only Dr. Jason Richardson. So thanks
Thank
for
you
being
for
here,
having
man.
me. Hey, thanks for
Whereabouts are
having
you
me.
right now?
Great.
You're in California, yeah?
Yep, California. So I fly out of the San Diego airport. I live in Carlsbad, which is about 35 minutes north of San Diego proper.
Fantastic. So I got a chance to meet you at
Hmm.
like I said, a program a few months ago out in Victoria with our friend Dr. Ed Osborne.
Yeah.
And well, I remember one of the things that we did during the program, which I thought was really cool. We kind of hot seated you. We kind of took your ideas, your business, your philosophy, all that stuff, and we kind of put it up on stage, and we kind of dissected it to see how we could help you be more effective. And
Yeah.
one of the cool things that I got from that, I guess number one was, I guess, when I first learned about all the stuff that you do,
Hmm.
like it's just awesome. It's just really, really
Oh, thank
cool.
you.
And it's always fascinating to me whenever I talk to somebody, I have somebody on as a guest for the podcast, or even meeting somebody or seeing someone on
Hmm.
stage speaking. It's that, like, one of the things that I picked up from you right away is that it seems like you just make it up so easily. Like, it's just like, oh, this guy was just like born like this. This is like, this is
I don't
awesome.
know about that, but yeah, I was just plopped on the earth, and there I was,
Exactly.
the
But
champion.
but it's interesting that, once we get to hear people's story, and that's, I think, a lot of times the perception is that we have of people, like, wow, like we don't see the backstory. And so all of a sudden we create this filter between, like, well, I'm me, and that's completely different person. Like, Jason is just a completely different species of person that, like, I don't identify with because he's just so perfect. And and but as we start to delve into this stuff, and I really want to start getting into
Yeah.
your story, that we start to see that, like, wow, like we're actually way more alike than we are
Yeah.
different. And that what all the stuff that you've achieved, all the things that you've done, is really within the grasp of all of us. It's really all within us, and it's a matter
Totally.
of training. It's a matter of a lot of stuff you talk about with mindset.
Hmm.
So I guess first, that is because as our guest, I want to get into your story. And once I love I remember hearing, James Altucher,
Yeah.
you know him?
Yeah.
So
I don't know him, but I know of him. He's awesome.
yeah, I know. I've never met him either,
Yeah.
but I love listening to his podcast. And one of the things he got me on is that he would always ask people about their origin story. He went over the kind of the comic book series, the origin series. I think it was the DC.
Hmm.
I think DC Comics. And
Maybe.
we get to hear, like, the backstories, like the whole story of how the superhero became the superhero.
Yes. Yes.
And so what's your origin story? Because I know you are you're a speaker, a trainer, a retired professional athlete,
Yes. Yes.
podcaster,
Yep.
husband, father, just cool dude.
Husband, father, uncle, friend. Yeah, all
Cool
of that.
deal.
All of that. So we're going to delve into the imperfections, which is, I actually wrote a blog, and it talked about, I think the title of it was Flawed to Perfection.
Mm.
Because we only really recognize something's perfect after the fact. Anyways, just an aside. But I guess my origin story, geez, man. So it's funny you're going right there, because this has kind of been a theme this week, in that I was thinking about that, and it's actually a recurring theme in my life. So my name is Jason Richardson. My first name is Jason. But what most people don't know is my mom's from Pakistan, and my middle name is Ahmed, Amed.
Hmm.
And so when I was racing at a young age, I started in New Jersey racing BMX bikes, and my mom signed me up as Ahmed Richardson, and nobody could pronounce my name. Especially in the early 80s, it was just, it was very foreign and exotic or whatever. And so I just remember that being a really big deal to me. Not that I was subconscious of it, but just frustrating.
Mm.
And so I kind of have this recurring theme of, like, becoming Jason Richardson. Um,
Mm.
and so in a weird way, I became who I am, and I'm always becoming who I am. And then if I'm to take that theme out further, I think that's what I help people do in their lives is become their own champion in their life. Um,
Right.
so my origin story starts with that. It starts with BMX racing, and I was just doing that to follow my brother around because that's what he did. And he was into skateboarding, and next to the skate park was a BMX track. He said, I want to try that. He went and tried that. I wanted to be like him, so I tried that, and then I just stuck with it. I used to suck very badly or very goodly. I don't know, but I was terrible at it when I first started. Um, and then one summer, well, not in one summer, I think it was like one like spring, because in New Jersey the track opens at a certain time of year for racing, but it was in a public park, so it was technically accessible. But I just got bored, and I just asked my mom if I could ride to the track, and that kind of became my thing that year. And then so when the first race started, I had ridden to the track, so I would ride to the track, which is about 4 miles, and then ride the track, and then ride home. Unbeknownst to me, I was training. I didn't realize that, but I won my first race that year. And then I got a little taste of what success was like. And not only that, but kind of the expectation and starting to believe in what's possible. And so that shift in perspective of what I was capable of
Mm.
happened pretty early on. And then it became, kind of the first choice that was made. It's like, okay, I'm going to pursue this, like really pursue it.
Right.
Long story longer, parents are divorced, so we would always travel back and forth from Vegas to New Jersey. I decided to move to Vegas from New Jersey in the middle of eighth grade, and the West Coast is way more. I would say progressive, but also you can ride year round. You can do most everything year round, and so um, I kept going with the racing, and then it turned into a career. I was able to get a national amateur title in my age group, and then I turned pro, thinking I had to quit racing to go to college. So I said, oh, I'll just turn pro and race the lower level of pro and just kind of say I did it. And then after my first year of college, I realized that I did not want to go to Vegas and work construction. And so I talked my dad into buying me 2 plane tickets to 2 races. And I bumped up to the next level. And first race bombed out. Second race made enough money to pay rent in the little attic space that I was renting out from a buddy. And so I made enough money to pay rent there and get money to the next race. And that's how it started. And then it just snowballed, and then sponsorship. And next thing I knew, I was graduating college and owning a home and a Range Rover and living an adult life. And it was really surreal, and just kind of kept riding that professional athletics wave until 2008. So from 93 to 2008, I was able to race a bicycle and travel the world. It's been amazing. Um,
Cool.
and through that, a lot of ups and downs professionally, was able to and sought help from a sports psychologist. Hence my interest in psychology and the mindset and all that, and learned
When
how to
did you
think
start
to
working
win.
with the sports psychologist? Like
Sports
how early
psychologist,
on?
I worked with him, yeah, 97 or 98. And he actually is a good friend of mine now. And yeah, so I worked with him off and on for several years.
Okay, cool.
And then, yeah, it was really, really cool. It was really about performance, about self, about personal development, about mindset, all of that stuff. And I mean, I was lucky in that he was not your typical sports psych guy. He went deep, and it it worked, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, so I found myself going that route. I did all through school. I went and graduated college at University of San Diego. Took about a year off, then went back and got my MBA. But the whole time I kept racing, because racing was enough, at least, to keep paying the bills, and I was enjoying the lifestyle. And then I broke my leg. I broke my femur in 2006,
Mm.
and that was pretty scary, because at that point I was married. I had my first child, and everyone kind of thought I was done. Even I thought I was done. I was one of the oldest guys in the class, and then I realized that it would probably be easier to heal from this with a real hard target to hit, versus just getting well to sit at a desk, or just getting well to live a quote unquote normal life. So I decided I want to race again. I didn't want to go out like that. Uh, so the whole purpose of me healing was to race again at a high level. And I was back on the track in 8 months. And then the following year, in 2007, I went to the Pan American Games, and brought home the gold for the United States, and
Awesome.
finished out the year in
Congratulations.
2008. Yeah, thanks. Finished out the year in 2008, number 3 in the nation, and then that was it. And then
And
on to
how did you
doc.
decide to stop at that point?
Yeah, so that's breaking my leg in 2006. My third race back, or my second race back, I happened to be sitting next to a psychologist couple coming back from a conference, and we were talking on the plane, and they were talking to me about, I was just talking about what they do, and I talked that I work with a sports psychologist. I like psychology. My undergrad was in philosophy, so I think in that way quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, you'd be great at this, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I would, because I don't see myself working in a cubicle per se. I don't see myself working in the industry and marketing, even though that stuff interests me." I said, and I like the business model. It's just me. There's no inventory. I can teach, I can speak, I can do all these things. So I literally got back home from that race and told everyone I was going back to school. When I decided to actually finish, it was 2008. I had a good year, and I actually was I was at a point in school where I was getting enough school hours to earn my hours towards licensure,
Yeah.
but I was kind of in limbo land, so to speak. So I was looking for internship placements and job placements just to kind of see what was out there. But I still had a bike and a uniform ready in case I was going to go out and race, at least, not a full schedule, but a reduced schedule in 2009. But it turned out that I ended up getting a job as a brand manager for a marketing agency, just as on a whim. And so I was a brand manager at a marketing agency, and for about 6 months, and then I was eligible to earn hours. I jumped right into earning hours towards my licensure. So I remember being on the gate my last race. I think it was around Thanksgiving time, just thinking. I remember because I had that job interview a week before, and I said, "I'm getting that job." I just knew they were going to offer me the job, and then so I literally finished racing, and then I was in a suit and getting flown to Chicago to meet the school district of some school board in Chicago, and doing some mark school programs. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And it was time. I mean, I was ready to be done with it.
Do you find, I find interesting, like when we look at athletics, especially, there seems to be like a couple mentalities, and you seem to be one of the kind of the healthier ones, and that there seem to be a lot of people who just like, they're just hanging on because, I guess, for whatever reasons, but like well past when they probably should have stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just,
well, and I'm glad you say I seem to be one of the healthier ones. I think there's a piece of all of us, and I work with a lot of athletes as well, where we do hang on. I mean, it's actually very few and far between where a lot of us get out, quote unquote, when we should. Mm-hmm. But that's a fine line, because it's so, to be candid, it's so easy. Once you're in and once you're doing it, even though
easy to continue,
easy to continue, because it is what you know, right? And when you think about, especially from BMX racing, so I made enough money to buy a house and make a living, but I didn't make Michael Jordan money. I didn't make LeBron James money. So it wasn't like I was going to ride off into the sunset and have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank account and just kind of, I could do whatever I want. So there was definitely something that I needed to do after I finished. And so, even my story, I kept going to school, especially the MBA. That was always kind of, I even talk about it in the book, that was kind of my safety backup, because it was my excuse to keep racing. So I was thinking, okay, if I'm in school, then no one's going to give me guff about racing, because everyone's going to think that I have this backup plan. But I still didn't know what I was going to do. I just had degrees. I'm glad I have them, but I didn't know necessarily what I was going to do until I pulled the trigger on becoming a psychologist, and then it started to click, and then it was easier to say, okay, I'm out of here. But a lot of riders, a lot of athletes do stick around for a long time, because it's what they know, it's how they identify themselves, and it's easy for them, even though they might be, the performance might be waning.
Right. I think it's a fascinating idea in that, so let's say on one end, they, I don't know a lot of people, especially like professional athletes, who get into it and do it and hate it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's usually because there's some sort of drive and, not, and matched with talent that they're doing that now for a living. Whereas on the other end, and so I guess it's easy. I can see how it's easy because that's what you have an identity around that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you know. That's what you love. But on the other end of the spectrum, there seems to be a lot of people who, let's say, who have gone through school. They've got a degree, and now they're working in a job that they potentially don't love,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing it because and I've had these conversations with people that that I've worked with, and they're like, well, because they think, well, what else am I going to do? Like, I spent 5-6 years getting this degree, like, like I should probably be doing this, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've invested so much time, I should just do this.
Yeah.
And yet it's like, well, it seems like, well, you've wasted all that time. Like, why would you want to waste more time doing something that you don't love?
Yeah, yeah, and that it's funny that you say that because my wife, I look back on my racing with nostalgia, but then my wife, she's good about keeping me grounded because she'll bring me back to those times where I wasn't that nostalgic when I was actually doing it, and I was going to the office was going to another race. I mean, I was traveling 20 plus weekends a year. Um, the performance, I was relatively consistent, but you're always nitpicking of, you're always splitting hairs, you're always fine tuning, you're always looking for the edge, you're always, so there's always just kind of this dissatisfaction, if you will. Even if you might have performed well, there's a bit of dissatisfaction because it's so difficult to maintain that high level. So it was still going to work. So it was pretty interesting that you brought up that thing. So but it was never that I didn't love it. And the fact that I did love it and I had a passion for it made it easier to deal with some of the job dissatisfaction that came along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think one of the best things about my BMX, about my racing experience, was that it taught me it taught me that it taught me about settling, and it taught me about what was possible, and it opened my eyes to a bigger world of being treated special. Uh,
What do you mean settling, by
Candidly,
the way?
settling.
Talk to me about
So so
settling.
so I so because I went to school and I learned to be an accountant, I'm in this job. Maybe it pays well. You're in the six figures, but I hate it. It's drudgery. I'm miserable, but I'm doing it because I spent all this money on school, and this is what I'm supposed to do.
Mm,
Right? And it might not have
gotcha.
been settling then when you set out to do it. You might have been excited when you got your first job or made partner or whatever it is. But now, 10 years later, 15 years in, you're literally unhappy. You're becoming unhealthy. Your relationships are uh, managing at best. Um, to me, that's a settle.
Right.
Whereas, whereas you kind of can't settle as a pro athlete if you want to maintain getting paid as one, and especially in an individual lifestyle sport, because there's a lot of younger, cooler, uh, faster, stronger, whatever coming up in the ranks that'll do it for less. So I had to learn how to provide value. I couldn't just settle on being a one trick pony out there on the track. It was my responsibility to become faster. It was my responsibility to become more skillful. It was my responsibility to do things that I thought I'd never do on a bicycle. So just from that aspect within my sport, I was able to extrapolate that and take that outside into the world. And so, I mean, I actually ran into somebody at an office the other day who we were both going through school and licensure at the same time, and they're not licensed yet.
Mm,
So yeah, so there's a lot of that, or they haven't had their dissertation done, or they're kind of you know waiting to land, so to speak, or really waiting to take off. So so I went through all those courses and rites of passage professionally relatively quickly, but that's because I approached it like I did my racing. I set a target and I just went after it incessantly until it happened, and then even as that was happening, and I knew it was just a matter of time. It was like, okay, let's throw out the target just a little bit further and reach for that. And
Right.
then and so that's what I do, and I do that out of habit, and I do that because that's the program we were on. If you talk to any one of my peers that were competing at my level and doing well, they have they have those same habits, and it's so funny that we can pick up 10 years later, and I know how they roll. Like I know how they run their lives, and they pitch that target out there, and it's just a matter of hitting it, and they work at it incessantly, and it's just they're on a program.
Right. How did you find going from, let's say you were talking about your last race and you knew like you were going to get that job. How did you go from kind of being on top in that level to like, how did you take that into the transition into something
How did I go
new?
from being a big fish to a small fish?
Yeah. Because I think it's an interesting, because I've had that frustration, excuse me, recently, like transitioning some of the stuff that I do and thinking like, well, okay, I'm on this level here, and it's just going to be like a lateral shift. I'm just going to take all of this stuff and kind of bring it over here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to perform the same. But then all of a sudden, like, oh wow, there's a big gap between being able to apply some of this stuff to something else. And
Right.
yeah, and I can see
Yeah.
like on a big stage like that, how it could be just even amplified, like you're saying, like
Yeah.
going from a big fish to a small fish.
Yeah. And so if I learned to get over myself, luckily, before I finished racing, so that was good. And having a child and being married forces you to do that. So I didn't have that to deal with. And the other thing that I had from a benefit standpoint from my sport was that, like I said, it wasn't like we were making tens of millions of dollars, so we were doing well, but it wasn't, so there was always in the back of mind something, another hustle to be done or had. Um, but I think the hard part was literally learning to work. Now I knew how to work hard, and my work ethic was good, but it was literally learning how to be at work. That, especially going to a
Mm,
marketing agency, right? So I'm at a marketing agency; they bill for hours, and I was pretty good on a computer, pretty good with certain things, but I'd never. I mean, literally, that was my first job, and I'm a brand manager at a marketing agency. I have some people underneath me, some people over. So that was kind of weird. So I would get work passed to me, and I would
right.
finish it because that my boss said, finish this, do this thing.
Do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I did it. And I would send it back, waiting for some kind of approval or some kind of whatever, and I would just be twiddling my thumbs because I was done. And then I looked around, I was like, wait, am I the only person doing this, or are they like pacing themselves? So so the hard part was really adjusting to like this office culture thing. And then I
Mhm.
realized, and don't get me wrong, they were smart, bright individuals, but oh, ooh, I bumped my computer, sorry. But they were smart, bright individuals, but there was a piece of me that felt like, okay, there's a lot of inefficiency in the quote unquote traditional 40-hour work week. And
Right.
and and I didn't play well in that because I stuck out like a sore thumb because I was operating as an entrepreneur inside a system that was traditional.
Right.
Um, and so it was just odd. And but I would watch my coworker, and she was very savvy. She had a lot of jobs. She was a student. She was a student council type person in college and clubs and all this other stuff. And I was thinking, okay. And she knew how to play the game very well and
Yeah.
pace herself and sit at the job and make it look like she's doing something, even though we were like I knew that she wasn't. So it was kind of an interesting. I mean, I'm not trying to speak bad of her, but she's talented, she's bright, but there's definitely a different. That was the biggest adjustment for me. And then I started looking around, like, so wait, you kids just like went to school and then just went to work, and then you just wait for weekends to do stuff, and that's it. Like that, that's it. You might have had 1 year of travel out of school, and you just that no, no, I don't know if I
Right.
want that. So it was just so that was interesting to me. That was interesting to me. So literally learning how to be at a job space 3 out of 8 hours a day was crazy. And the other thing that I realized, like, I don't need to be here to do what you're asking me to do. Like, I really don't. And I'd probably be more productive if I were gone.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was the biggest adjustment for me. And it is a big adjustment for a lot of athletes in that you go from this, I'm just going to call it a special setting, to another setting that you're not used to. And so you are a fish out of water, so to speak. And there is a certain sense of conformity or settling in, that adjustment that is difficult. And then if you want to couple that, if you are a big fish in a big pond or big fish in a big ocean, and then you're just another guy out there, nobody gives a crap who you are or what you do or why you do it. You're just some dude in traffic or some
Right.
woman in traffic, then hits you hard from an emotional and psychological standpoint. And then it's, then someone like me comes in to help you transition through that. And
Yeah. So how do you start helping someone with that transition? Because I think, I mean, it's applicable to not only like athletes, but I think anybody, because it's an interesting time that we live in. Because I think if we think about like our parents, that generation and before, I mean, they had jobs that they like retired in, like it was the thing that people did. You just got a job and you stuck at it for 50 years. You got your pension, you did whatever it was, you got your gold watch at the end, and you retired. But now people are, they move around tons, and it seems to be there's way more opportunity for people to think like, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. But yet once we start to, especially when we look at entrepreneurs and we start to achieve some level of success, all of a sudden it seems to become easy to hold on to that identity, as opposed to, transitioning, and that transition can be very painful. So rather than staying with the pain and through that transition and learning from it, and being coached by somebody like you, we'll tend to just stick in the like, oh, I know this world, so it's, and maybe this is what's expected of me, and like you're saying, like you start to settle. So how do you start with a transition for someone?
So for me, normally people come to me for one thing, and it's usually either either in the affluence place, which is more success or achievement, or it's in the influence space, which is I need more time, more balance, control. And they always forget about the third one. This is like my Venn diagram right now coming together, which is the quality space, which is happy, right? And I think what happens is we humans try to avoid feelings we don't like. That's just kind of the normal thing. And I think that has been a major, even I think with psychology, it's a major disservice that I think a lot of psychology people have done, is that we want people to feel good. But the truth is, and the research shows, that you actually truly feel good when you're actually earning and growing and connecting. So I always say there's happiness and sadness within happiness and sadness, meaning you can go to a prison yard and there's people joking and laughing. They're not happy people, I promise you, in general, right? But they still can manage some happiness within the unhappy, right? And so sometimes we're in that prison yard, and it's like, no, let's flip this. Let's recognize that even though we can be globally happy, as we're maybe dissatisfied with the fact that our garage idea hasn't sold yet, website isn't quite launched yet, or I'm still waiting for the call back from that last interview, or the VC funding hasn't quite come through yet. So no matter what you do, whether it's by your choice or by circumstance, there's always a sense of unwanted feelings. And I think what happens is people think they're supposed to feel good all the time. And when I say feel good, meaning, roller coaster, wee, this is fun. No, life, you're actually supposed to feel everything. You're supposed to feel good when good things happen. You're supposed to feel crappy when crappy things happen. But when you feel crappy, it's not to that doesn't mean it validates some negative belief you have about yourself or the world. You feel crappy so that you can say, holy shit, I don't want this to happen again. Let me change what I'm doing or how I see or how I'm thinking about this thing and go at it a different way.
Right.
So that's the first thing that I get into with most everyone is like, hey, I'm not here to just put band-aids on stuff and just give you coping skills and breathing techniques here. Like, we have to have a real conversation about expectations and being aligned. And then from there, it's like, okay, what do you want to do? What kind of life do you want to lead, right? So business, sport, life, right? Influence, affluence, quality, business, sport, life, affluence, influence, quality. I keep going around and around that circle, and we work that diagram to where we can, we find that place where all of those things converge. And that's the effort. And the effort is keeping those things in convergence so that you're living a life by your design, a life by your control as best you can. And then from there, it's kind of like, if it's $1 million lifestyle, it's $1 million lifestyle. If it's $100,000 lifestyle, it's $100,000 lifestyle. But that's on you, and you own it now, right? And that's yours. You can have an empire at $60,000 a year, and you can have an empire at $60 million a year. My point is, let's help you build your empire. And I think once you take, and by the way, ownership could be working as an accountant and, working, for some government agency. It doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur, but definitely let's get those, that business, sport, life to converge. And that's where you're going to find your purpose and fulfillment. And as long as we can keep continuing to go and train ourselves to push and grow and evolve, then we're good. Because what happens is we get comfortable and we like where we are, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, need to hold on to this to be safe.
Right.
And unfortunately, that can lead us to stop growing and stop connecting and stop reaching out and stop putting ourselves out there. And then we become stagnant, and then we're unhappy again.
Yeah. What have you found, like, common, I guess, patterns that you see people in that kind of stops them from being able to change that and kind of step into that mode? Totally.
And usually it begins with it, usually it's some kind of fear-based belief. Mm-hmm. And I, my book, it's all BS. BS stands for belief systems. What is the bullshit we tell ourselves? What's the bullshit story we say to ourselves every day? And usually, especially around something that hasn't worked out for us, that we tell ourselves the reason as to why it hasn't worked out. And where did that come from? What's the source of that? Maybe it's mommy, daddy issues. Maybe it's just a confluence of events. Maybe you actually had a hard, crappy life. Like, the evidence just doesn't point to that. Doesn't mean you can't change direction. So really, it's helping them get at that source of where that belief, that core belief is coming from, and working to surgically remove that, neurologically remove that, and start to do that. And so what we do is I try to implement interventions, mini interventions, daily interventions that they can do, whether it's daily or hourly or weekly, that help them see successes that prove their belief wrong.
Right.
And then what we do, we want to anchor that with something. We want to
Can you
anchor
give me an
that
example of something that you would do? Say something that you do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's especially when it comes to, it's cool because with let's say with athletics especially, and I think I always love these conversations that we have when it comes to, let's say, success principles. There's the idea of there's a lot of these like cliche ideas that we get from sport, like baseball analogies, like swinging for the Raptors sort of thing, or consistently hitting singles. Like, there's all these little analogies that we take from sport and try to apply it to our life. I find sometimes it gets a little bit cliche that, it's just something to say and something that people will repeat to themselves, but they don't really have an actual practice that actually makes it real.
Rhetoric. It's just rhetoric, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, just hit singles, just get on base. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well,
Yeah, what does that mean?
what are you talking about? I'm feeling
What do you mean
depressed. I
get
feel
on
like
base?
shit.
Yeah, what do you mean get on base? I go to an office every day. There's no bases to get on. I'm already here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So what's kind of something that you'd go through with somebody like what is a practice that someone might or could do?
So I push them hard to move. And I push them hard to just it could be little things. So like even in my book, I challenge people to brush their teeth with the opposite hand for a week.
That's a good one.
I mean, and it's so stupid, right? Like I honestly wish it were more prophetic and magical, but to just push themselves, drive home a different way every day for a week.
Right.
Set your alarm on your Apple Watch or your phone every hour with a reminder in there, right? And it might say something stupid like get on base.
Right.
Breathe, lie down on the floor. Like, and usually those are attached. I usually attach that thing to something that they're kind of dealing with that we've talked about that makes sense to them, that's meaningful to them. But it has meaning, and it usually changes their behavior in some way. And then I ask them to track the change along the way in perspective. A lot of people, athletes included, because we morph into whatever it is we do. You sit at a desk all day, you morph into that position. My hip flexors are always tight because I've ridden a bike for, I don't know, all my life since I was 5, hard.
Right.
And so my body's never doing this. My body's like this a lot. And so my body wants to do this. So it's good for me to lay on a ball like this, right? To open up. And
Right.
honestly, when I do that, just doing that, not only does my body heal from what it was morphing into, but guess what? It starts to work the way it's supposed to, which means the blood's going to flow differently, which means I'm going to get different thoughts going to my head. I'm going to feel a different energy. I have literally had clients say to me that while they were, and I recommend yoga, I recommend breathing, but while they were laying on the floor under their desk with their feet up, right, that they've solved the problem, or they figured out why, their wife was mad at them, whatever it might be. But just those little changes in behavior, or them forcing themselves to find a new way home, right? The act of looking for different direction, right? It seems simple. Find a new way home every day. Okay, but what does that really do fundamentally, right? That neurologically, that's going to mirror. That's going to mirror. You're going to find a new way to solve that problem. You're going to approach your next investment meeting or your next pitch meeting a little bit differently. Well, shit, I've been to 5 meetings and everyone said no. But then after you drive home 5 different ways, even though there's only so many ways to go home, you'll probably have the tool set and the neurological programming and priming to figure out a different way to approach that pitch meeting.
Right. Right. So it's like a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, it's a pattern interrupt. I always say internal consistency, external consistency. So what's going on in here definitely reflects out there. My job is I'm a mirror. I hold up the mirror. I mean, other than, blind folk, I mean, it's very difficult to get ready in the morning without a mirror.
Right.
Right.
It's so true.
But the brain can't see itself. The brain can't see itself, and it's super good at compensating because it has to compensate to keep your behind alive. And so pattern interrupt, put up the mirror, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was doing that. It's why athletes look at film. Right. I don't know how many times I've worked with an athlete. It's like, yeah, you're going inside. I'm not going inside. You're going inside. Okay, look at the film. Oh my gosh, I was going inside. Yeah, you have more room. You could actually go about 2 feet over. I didn't realize that. That's okay.
Right.
Now you know.
Right. So by switching something, say even mundane, like you're saying, like brushing, I'm gonna try that actually. I'm gonna brush my teeth with my left hand for this next week. Yeah. So you're saying, by changing something up like that all of a sudden kind of brings you into more of, I guess, a present moment. You start to be able to see the patterns of before, and you can start to, kind of disassociate. Not disassociate. That's not the right word, but like, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, because you can see the dichotomy between where you are and where you might want to be. You can kind of see it with fresh
Correct.
eyes.
Correct.
That's very
Correct.
cool.
And you also subconsciously begin to get more comfortable with discomfort
Mm.
because we like to be comfortable. We value comfort.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to get home and get into bed. Netflix and bed is, I mean, like, it's one of my favorite things, but I want to make sure I've earned it that day.
Right.
So the one thing about athletes that I think they can harness and they forget to outside of athletics is that they have this natural ability to do this because they do it all the time in their sport. Remember, constantly splitting hairs, constantly fine tuning, constantly splitting hairs, constantly fine tuning. It, and if we can get rid of the narcissistic stuff that comes along with that, right?
Yeah.
And constantly fine tune and split hairs with a more purpose driven, connected, value offering way of being, then you have that convergence of affluence, influence, and quality.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about, that I know that I take from, because I'm nowhere near a professional athlete, but take the principle from athletics is, yeah, like always be looking for that little edge, like always, yeah, like reviewing tape all the time. And like what can we change a little bit? What can we tweak? What can, what I remember seeing, do you follow MMA at all? Mixed martial
A
arts?
bit. I mean, it's hard not to with Conor McGregor, and he's so.
Yeah, he's larger than life.
Yeah, yeah.
There's another guy, Demetrius Johnson, who is
Okay.
he's like a flyweight. So he's like he fights in like the
Mm.
125-pound division, and he's considered, even though he's a small guy, he's considered one of he's like the GOAT, greatest of all time. He's the most
Mhm.
prolific champion in that organization, and I think in any organization at this point.
Yeah.
And he just tied for the record for most, I guess, consecutive championship title defenses,
Oh
like
wow.
10 or something. And one of the cool things I remember hearing about, and I didn't see any of the footage, but what was really cool is that first thing he did when he got out of the octagon, went backstage and we're with his coaches, the first thing he said was, okay, what did I do wrong? This is a guy who just fought,
Yeah.
picture perfect match,
Hmm.
but he's always like, and I think, well, that's how you stay the best. That's how you stay the greatest. Is like, where can I improve? Even
Hmm.
at that level, it's like, what can I just start to tweak?
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
it's a cool place to be. Like, even though you are the greatest, to, like you're saying, kind of take away like the ego part of it, and start to look at like where can I change things up? How can I take a different route home now
Hmm.
and see things in a new light?
Yeah. Yeah. And and it's interesting that he says that, what did I do wrong? I would probably push back and say, well, we don't know that you did anything, but I think you're asking what do you want? What can you do better?
Right,
Right.
right.
And so if I were working with him, that's where I would really be parsing that language, right? Because
Yeah, that's so true. It's
even
so
even
important.
even for him, as good as he is and as great as he is, I it's a matter of what can I do better?
Better. Right.
Because what happens is that's another way people motivate themselves. They beat themselves up.
Mm,
And I say, if you beat yourself up, all you're going to end up is beat up.
right.
So it's okay to get better, and I'm not saying like ignore the facts. If you get beat up, you get beat up in a fight. If you lose, you lose. If you did something wrong, you did something wrong. However, even if you did something wrong, you can do that better, and even if you did something well, you can possibly do that better, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of growth and improvement, and it's a mindset. So if I were working with him, I would just push back a bit and ask him to adjust his language about that. And that's something that I do all day long. And you probably even hear in this interview, like sometimes I'll correct myself.
Right.
I don't like to say need. I don't like to say have to. I actually have some rigid rules about language because I know how much it affects the programming, and I want to be able to teach that and spread that. And that's probably one of the hardest things, even as a parent, that I try try to work with, even though I'm not psychologizing them, and I don't want to
Right.
psychologize my kids. Um, but just minding my language so that it's very growth oriented versus just
Yeah.
finite.
Yeah. So actually, if you're listening, Mighty Mouse, Demetrius Johnson, if you're listening, hit up Jason.
There we
He'll
go.
take you to the next level.
That's it. Always another level.
Yes. Cool, man. So how do people get in touch with you? Because I know, I mean, I'm sure the people are going to want to dive in more. I know you've got a book, you've got, you work with
Yes.
people one-on-one, you've got programs, you're
Mm-hmm.
speaking. Yeah. So
Yep.
how do people get
So
in?
so so the best way to get in touch with me is my website, Dr.jRichardson.com, drjasonrichardson.com. And then on Instagram and Twitter, my handle is the same. It's at real Dr. J Rich. That's at real DRJRICH. And I'm really focusing in on two things right now. Focusing in on speaking. I love to get on a plane and light the crowd up and do trainings and that sort. And I think that just stems from me getting on a plane and racing bikes. So
Yeah.
old habits. I know, and I don't want to give that one up. So I love to get out and speak and meet people in the public. And then the other way is I actually just opened up 7 coaching spots. Usually I open up for 10 coaching spots for 6 months, but there was 3 people that wanted to stay on from earlier on this year. So I have 7 coaching spots for high level, high energy person with me for 6 months. So I just opened up 7 coaching spots, and then I do have another program coming out soon. I developed one for specific to the BMX World Championships that are coming out, but a lot of people have told me that it would be good to apply it to business, sport, and life. So it's Championship Mindset Program, and that will be available very soon as an audio and a PDF. And it's pretty awesome. Get people to focus in on what they want and give them a very specific mindset training regimen as to how to do it with breathing, and really pushing back on some gut check questions as to why they're doing what they're doing and getting clear on what they want, and then giving them a program to get it.
Cool.
So plenty of ways to work with me.
Yeah, and I think even just getting on. Well, I follow you online, all those channels, but I love the videos that you put up on Facebook. They're always super inspiring, and yeah, they're just like a few minutes that you put out, and yeah, it's always got a good little kick in the butt, and yeah, and it's cool. I like that you do it. It's like there's like kind of that rah like type of message, but you do it in such like a fun loving, like smiley, like gentle way, and I love that. I think that's really really cool.
Yeah, I know I'm an intense person, but yeah, I appreciate that you say that, because I've made it a habit to I love what I do, and I one of the favorite things, I was working with my athletes. If we have a little bit of time, I have to tell this story. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I was working with my athletes, and it's literally coming down to qualify for the Olympics. Like, and basically everyone's tied. They've worked all these 3 years, and it comes down to one race. And so my athlete, she was on the podcast. On my podcast, and she just was having a nervous breakdown, essentially, the night before. And so I'm like, we're in England, and I'm walking some hotel like 1 a.m. and she's supposed to be racing at like 8 a.m. and just having a nervous breakdown. And it just boiled down to the humanity, right? Because she was very like in this kind of intense, like, wanting to be, and we worked a long time on her being okay with being okay. Like, you don't have to be awesome, you don't have to be super great, you don't have to be badass, da 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 da. Even though she is awesome and she is a badass by all means. However, you don't have to be that to get what you want.
Right.
You just have to be you, right? Like being okay is actually more powerful. Like, if you're okay in a high stress situation like that, like, I want the person who's okay. I don't want the person who's amped up and, because that person's gonna, excuse my language, that person's gonna shit the bed.
Right.
And so, sure enough, and so what I love about sports, what I love about it, at the end of the day, it's so fundamentally human. Like it is just so, so human. And that to me is the purity of it. Like I just interviewed someone on a podcast. He's an Olympic silver medalist. And he said that when he moved to the United States, you know who put him up? The Olympic gold medalist.
Nice.
Yeah. Right? So it's like, I need a place to stay for a couple of weeks. Sure. Now, granted, that gold medalist coach says, room to him next year. But it's just like, that's what people, that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, it doesn't have to be me or you.
Right.
Right. You don't necessarily compete against, you compete with. When you cross the finish line, you go in different directions. Like you're competing with them. They help you get better and vice versa. So it's the humanity of it. And so I appreciate what you said about the Facebook videos, because I really work hard to bring that out, that aspect to competition and high performance and that convergence of influence, affluence, and quality that can exist at every level. And so when I sign off and say, I love you guys, I mean it. I do feel that. So
I feel it.
Recognizing it's a long story to get to that. But yes, the humanity of it all is the best part, because, regardless of money in the bank or accolades or achievements, it's going to boil down to, like, did you do something that mattered? And can you look at yourself in the mirror and how are your relationships, bro?
Yeah.
That's it.
It's so true. It's so fundamental. So fundamental. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much I know you got to jump on another call in a minute there. So thanks so much for having, for taking the time and joining us. And I'll put all of these links that you mentioned. I'll put them all up on the show notes page. And for whoever's watching live right now, thanks so much for being here. We love you guys, and I'm the same way, man. I love you.
All right.
And guys, have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Elaine. Peace.